On behalf of Pathologists and Pharmacologists of India, Local Chapter Gwalior, a warm welcome to you all. COVID-19 pandemic has messed human life in past few months. We have been the witness of acute phase of second wave of COVID-19. At present, this phase is over. So at present, there are many patients who are in the recovery phase of COVID-19. Therefore, this symposium, post-COVID, returning to normal health, has been planned to help these group of patients and share the information across the country for early recovery from COVID ailments. Now, I request Dr. Kushal Madan sir. He is a very talented and renowned person. He is associate professor and cardiac rehabilitation consultant at Sir Ganga Ram Hospital, New Delhi. He is a fellow of American Heart Association and also immediate past chair of Exercise, Cardiac Rehabilitation and Prevention Committee Council on Clinical Cardiology, American Heart Association. He also has been appointed as faculty for American Heart Association, World Heart Federation, European Association of Cardiovascular Prevention and Rehabilitation. Recently, he visited MS Psychophysiology Laboratory at MS Research Center, NASA. He has authored many articles and chapters in journals and books of national and international repute. Sir, it is a great pleasure to have you with us. I request Sir to share his expertise on post-COVID cardiorespiratory rehabilitation. Madan Sir, please.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I'm sharing my screen and keeping the time consideration. I'll try to keep my presentation very brief, but to the point. I'm here to talk about cardiorespiratory rehabilitation after COVID-19. And first of all, I would like to say that just as with acute medical care, rehabilitation actually has no evidence specific to COVID-19, but rehabilitation is like medical care, a problem-solving process, some specific problems needing specific treatments. And especially after severe COVID-19 disease, many patients will experience a variety of problems and will require rehabilitation services to overcome these problems. And this rehabilitation process basically involves a simple screening process, use of a multidisciplinary expert team, and 4 evidence-based classes of intervention, that is the exercise, education, nutrition, and the psychosocial support. And all these are individualized, tailored interventions as per the patient's primary problems and concerns. Now, we must understand that how does this rehabilitation fit in the context of COVID-19 pandemic? So the rehabilitation starts right from the beginning when the patient is in the ICU till the discharge when he's at home. So basically, rehabilitation is the ideal program for the restoration of all aspects of the patient recovery, starting from hospitalization to post-discharge when the patient is back home. Now, there are separate rehabilitation recommendations for mildly ill patients during hospitalization, separate rehabilitation recommendations for moderately ill patients during hospitalization, and separate rehabilitation recommendations for severely ill patients during hospitalization, and a totally separate rehabilitation treatment for mildly or moderately or severely ill patients after discharge. Now, since this session is dealing with post-COVID scenario, I will be limiting my talk mainly to rehabilitation after discharge, that is the long-term rehabilitation. So basically, rehabilitation in the clinical management of COVID-19 needs typically are related to the consequences of ventilatory support and prolonged immobilization, leading to impaired lung function, physical deconditioning and muscle weakness, delirium and other cognitive impairments, impaired swallow and communication, mental health disorders, and psychosocial support needs. In fact, Dr. Deepak also mentioned this study by Karfi et al., which is actually a very good study. Proportion of those who are recovering from COVID-19 are likely to have significant and ongoing symptoms, notably dyspnea, fatigue, and cough, functional impairment, and psychological disturbances. Now, in this Italian study by Carfi et al., in 143 patients, it was reported that 87% patients reported persistence of at least one symptom after 60 days. And in another study of 100 hospitalized and 2001 non-hospitalized patients, multiple symptoms were present about 3 months after the symptoms onset. For additional assessment of the underlying physical, emotional, cognitive, and social factors by a multidisciplinary team, which is needed to better understand the persistence of these symptoms and to identify the possible traits for rehabilitation. And in an online survey, which was conducted by British Thoracic Society to identify the components of post-COVID-19 rehabilitation assessment and elements of a successful rehabilitation program, and there was a strong support for the assessment of mood, quality of life, fatigue, cough, and assessment of lung function. In the similar study, the essential components which reached the consensus for post-discharge recovery were exercise advice for home-based aerobic and resistance programs, fatigue management, management of breathlessness, and management of mood disturbances, and some unique aspects of COVID-19 which were rated highly, included psychological support for social isolation, dealing with grief and death of a family member. Now, this survey actually supported in developing an appropriate recovery pathway for the patient post COVID-19. And now, in this pathway, initial few weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks or 6 multidisciplinary rehabilitation program. Now, in this, what we find in this pathway, like the many constituents recommended are already core components of existing rehabilitation pathways that assess and manage the rehabilitation needs of patients with long-term conditions, notably the cardiac and pulmonary rehabilitation pathways. And these include interdisciplinary healthcare professionals, including, but not limited to, dietitians, nurses, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and exercise physiologists and psychologists. According to the American Thoracic Society and European Respiratory Rehabilitation post-COVID-19 as a comprehensive intervention which is based on a thorough patient assessment, followed by patient-tailored therapies that include, but are not limited to, exercise training, education, and behavior change, designed to improve the physical and psychological condition of people with chronic respiratory disease and to promote the long-term adherence to health-enhancing behaviors. Now, before I begin with a specific respiratory or cardiac rehabilitation program, and already Shweta ma'am and Deepak sir have already briefed about the mechanisms, we must understand that understanding these mechanisms underlying the COVID-19 injury is actually necessary to implement and conceptualize a possible rehabilitation protocol. The different complications may require different protocols and precautions. Now, as we all know that COVID-19 involves the systemic inflammation with an increase in the oxidation state to varying degrees, and the systemic inflammatory state persists over time defining what the scientific literature is now describing as long COVID. In such a scenario, a correctly structured and guided cardiopulmonary rehabilitation, including exercise, education, nutrition, psychological support, intervenes in this inflammatory state by promoting the recovery of the antioxidant defenses. Now, exercise training in almost always characterized by respiratory problems of various degrees. Thus, performing respiratory rehabilitation in COVID-19 patients, along with cardiac rehabilitation, helps to ameliorate the dyspnea, alleviate anxiety, depression, reduces the complications, prevents and improves dysfunction, and preserves the functions and actually improves the quality of life. Now, we must understand the basic principles of respiratory rehabilitation, considering COVID-19 into mind. Timing is very important, and early respiratory rehabilitation severely and critically ill patients if their condition remains unstabilized. The timing of respiratory rehabilitation intervention should exclude all the contraindications for pulmonary rehabilitation. The principle of personalization is very important when we are dealing with COVID-19 patients, regardless to the type of intervention. In particular, for patients with severe critical conditions, the elderly patients or the patients with comorbidities, obese patients, diabetic patients with one or more organ failure, the respiratory rehabilitation plan should be customized, individualized, tailored based on the unique problems of each patient. And the next principle, which is of utmost importance, is the evaluation. Evaluation and monitoring must be conducted from the initiation until the completion of rehabilitation program. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. The principal recommendations for discharged patients, first of all, we must understand, like in any rehabilitation program, what is the exclusion criteria, who should not be included in the rehabilitation. And COVID, actually, these are the recommendations which I've sorted out from the guidelines from China and Italy. They have developed their own guidelines for cardiopulmonary rehabilitation, and I'm citing from those references itself that any patient with a heart rate more than 100 beats per minute, or if the blood pressure is less than by 90/60 or more than 140/90, if the blood oxygen saturation is less than 95%, or if they have any other disease in which exercise is unsuitable, such patients should be excluded from a structured, planned rehabilitation program. And any rehabilitation program, evaluation is must. First step is evaluate and assess. And in the clinical evaluation, we all will be having the imaging document. Imaging will be documented. There will be laboratory reports, lung function, and so on, physical examination. Plus, when a patient is coming to a rehabilitation setup, the range of motion measurement is very important. Balance function should be evaluated by Berg balance scale. The aerobic exercise capacity, the 6-minute walk test has actually gained importance during these COVID times. I'll just share how. And the physical activity questionnaires should be executed along with the assessment of the activities of daily living. Now, what I want to say is, like, these evaluations are based on questionnaires. We have set questionnaires for these evaluations, but the 6-minute walk test, as we all know, that it is a sub-maximal exercise test, and it is used to assess the aerobic capacity in both in pulmonary as well as in cardiac rehabilitation. And now it has become a screening tool for a patient with COVID who actually do not show hypoxia. I mean, if the low oxygen saturation below 94% at rest, and people who are at high risk with comorbidities like heart disease. Now, post the walk, if the oxygen, so as we all know that the patient is made to walk for 6 minutes along a path of 30 meters. Now, post the walk, if the oxygen saturation actually drops below 93%, or if there is an absolute drop of more than 3 to 5%, then that patient is considered to be at risk. So we have to be very careful because these are such patients who do not actually show hypoxia but are prone for it. So 6-minute walk test has actually gained importance during these COVID times. And what after the assessment, what are the respiratory rehabilitation interventions? And the very first intervention which I truly believe in is patient education. We must educate the patient and their family members about the disease process, what are the factors involved, what is happening inside, and what we are actually expecting out of them. We can make use of manuals or video materials. And in fact, I tell you, during this COVID time, the people are, as we all know, people are hesitant to come to the hospital for exercise programs, but they are liking the education program thanks to the technology that we can actually do tele-rehabilitation through education programs. Okay, so the first intervention is the education of the patient as well as their family members, because they have so many questions, they have so many doubts, and we have to relieve their anxiety. Once they understand the disease process, then the actually becomes better. As far as the exercises for respiratory rehab are concerned, aerobic exercises can be begun in mild or moderate cases. Once they are discharged, they can go and start with some mild aerobic exercises such as walking, brisk walking, or jogging and so on. But we have to be careful that they begin from a low intensity and very gradually increase the intensity, and duration can be 3 to 5 times per week for 20 to 30 minutes each time. And but mind it, everything is individualized according to the need and requirement of the patient. Now the intermittent exercise can be used in patients means like they can exercise for 3 minutes, then they can take a break for 2 minutes, then they can exercise for 3 minutes. So rest period is included in between. Strength training, some people who are, the frequency can be kept very low, 2 to 3 times per week, with a training period of 6 weeks ideally, and a weekly increase of 5% to 10%. But in COVID-19 patients, we have RM, that is the 1 repetition maximum. They have to begin the strength with such a weight which they are very comfortable for performing like 15 repetitions without any discomfort. So that is the weight they have to begin with. Plus, if they have some other neurological issues, or if they have some balance issues, the balance training can be started. If they have any balance dysfunction, including hand-free training and other balance training using the Google board and other devices, but it has to be under the guidance of a physiotherapist because they know how to do this. Moreover, the next and the very important thing is breathing training. That is, if the patients still have shortness of breath, irrespective whether they have hypoxia or not, they can have dyspnea, as Shweta told. The breathing training is actually very easy. It is known as ACBT, that is the active cycle of breathing technique. Now, what it involves is like a deep breathing, but slow, like the gradual deep breathing for 20-30 seconds, followed by a normal relaxed breathing for 20-30 seconds, again deep breathing for 20-30 seconds. So there is a cycle. Once we have 3-4 cycles of deep breathing and relaxed breathing, we have to teach the patient to huff, followed by cough if needed. Now, actually, once we train just now Deepak sir said about the MCC, the mucociliary clearance and airway clearance. Now, huffing is a very strong technique in giving the results. Once we do this deep breathing and relaxed breathing, 3-4 cycles, after that, if we tell the patient to huff, it is very easily for them to take the sputum out. I hope we all understand what huff means. Huffing is nothing but it is a slow, deep breath in through your nose, but then you have to breathe the air out quickly through your mouth, so that as we clean our glasses and we just huff on the mirror, that moisture comes up. We do that huffing technique. That is very effective, and it actually relieves the stress as well as the sputum. So this active cycle of breathing technique should be actually taught to the patients, and maybe they can perform this twice in a day. Next, breathing exercise, which is actually becoming controversial nowadays, is incentive spirometry. Incentive spirometry is actually a lung expansion technique, which promotes the sustained maximal inspiration, and it is proposed to help the patients by improving the ventilation perfusion. Exactly, the benefit is on the same principles how proning helps. Most of the hospitals, they include incentive spirometry in their discharge instructions for patients with COVID-19, but it is not a universally accepted recommendation, and I strongly suggest that it should be kept like individualized according to the need of the patients. Now, what are the concerns actually raised, which are actually without any data? There is no data to support these concerns, that it may lead to self-inflicted lung injury, or it could theoretically increase the aerosolization of the virus, which I personally believe cannot be possible. In fact, the patients are talking loudly, the patients are coughing. In such a scenario, incentive spirometry is actually helpful for the patients. Then the physiotherapists, they know better how to teach the breathing controls. There are certain techniques like the diaphragmatic breathing. We have to tell the patient. Now, in any of the respiratory breathing techniques, the first step is that we have to teach the patient how to relax themselves. All these positions, all these techniques are performed when the patients are sitting in a very comfortable position. We have to tell the patients that they have to put their one hand on the chest and one hand on their tummy, and they have to feel the breath in and out, something like when we teach meditation to the patient. And when they breathe out, the tummy actually falls gently, and the patient should imagine that all the tension in the body is relieved as they let the air out. So with every breath out, the patient learns to feel more relaxed and calm. And another technique which we have just started is like the breathing rectangle technique. It is nothing but a sort of a visual feedback to the patient. They can concentrate on any rectangle in the room, like maybe the door or maybe the window, and they have to understand that expiration versus inspiration. So it has to be like 2:3. So they inspire 2 seconds and they expire 3 seconds. So they have to the eyes of the patient should follow the rectangle. So following the rectangle, they can breathe out, and then they can give a pause, and then they can breathe in, and then pause, and then breathe out. The important thing we have to teach to the patient is that the ratio, inspiration expiration ratio, should be 2:3. These are the basics of respiratory rehabilitation. But as Shweta ma'am also told, that there are so many cardiovascular sequelae in post COVID-19 patients. So the cardiac rehabilitation after COVID-19 is of importance. The purpose in the context of cardiovascular complications of COVID-19 is to is to trigger the systemic antioxidant response, the exercise training. In cardiac rehabilitation, the most important component is the exercise training. Exercise is like a biological drug. So it has to be in the right dose, at the right time, to the right patient. So it is to trigger the systemic antioxidant response, to modulate the inflammatory state which is generated by the virus, and to intervene in the endothelial dysfunction caused by the same. I think Dr. Deepak agrees with me on this. He also explained in his presentation the role of physical activity in improving the endothelial dysfunction. Now, what are the guidelines say? Actually, for any aerobic endurance training, 40 to 60% of the maximum heart rate reserve is to be achieved, which can be increased gradually to 80% based on the patient's condition. And after the discharge, maybe after the 4 or 6 weeks of discharge, when the patient are willing to join these aerobic endurance exercise programs, the frequency is like 3 to 5 times per week. And obviously, it has all the set cardiovascular effects like the endothelial dependent vasodilation. It promotes endothelial function improvements, increased bioavailability of nitric oxide. Plus, there is a beneficial effect on the blood pressure control as well. Now, in the COVID scenario, what the literature, the upcoming literature from the globe is that especially for the more compromised post-COVID-19 patients, interval training is the first approach. It is preferable and it is better tolerated. It is also sort of aerobic exercise, but it is like a series of moderate and high intensity exercises interspersed with rest. So like 4 minutes of exercise, maybe on a treadmill or maybe on a cycle ergometer, followed by 2 minutes of rest, followed by 4 minutes of exercise, followed by 2 minutes of rest. But we have to mind the intensity should be individualized. Keeping between 2 to 3 minutes is a good number to begin with, and frequency is 3 to 5 times per week. And as the literature, the upcoming literature suggests, is that the cardiovascular and the endothelial improvements are greater in interval training as compared to the endurance training. But the following parameters one should always constantly evaluate during the exercise in these post-COVID patients, that the saturation should remain more than 93% during the whole exercise. Heart rate must not increase more than 20 beats per minute from the baseline. And obviously, if these are the patients who already have cardiovascular complications, who are already heart patients, their pharmacological therapy should be carefully considered, because especially the use of beta blockers, as they limit the physiological increase during the exercise. During the exercise, the blood pressure, the systolic blood pressure must be between like 90 and 180. And we must understand the symptomology of the patient during the exercise. I am not sure whether people know about this Borg scale of dyspnea and the rate of perceived exertion scale of fatigue, but these are very important tools which we routinely practice in our rehabilitation. It is just a visual indication. We show these kind of charts to the patient and we ask, like, dyspnea, we ask the patient ki saans kitni phul rahi hai, kaise phul rahi hai, during the training session for these patients, the score should not go beyond 4 as far as dyspnea is concerned, and the rate of perceived exertion should not go beyond 13. That is, he will say that, okay, now the exercise is a little bit of difficult for me. I think that is the time we should stop. We do not have to pressurize, or we do not have to compel the patient ki nahi karna hi hai. So we have to respect the Borg scale for dyspnea, not more than 4, and rate of perceived exertion not more than 13. And we should understand the exercise termination criteria. I think it is just a repetition which I've already mentioned before, that if we find the heart rate is falling, or if the heart rate is more than 120 beats per minute, or the saturation is falling down, or the systolic BP is falling down, And some patients I've seen, they report the fluctuations in the body temperature. Like morning when they get up, the temperature is different. By the afternoon, temperature is different, and by the evening, the temperature is there more than 99.5 or something. So if those patients who have fluctuations in body temperature, I think we should give them time for the settlement of the inflammation before we take them into the exercise program. And during the exercise, if there is any respiratory symptoms of fatigue which worsens and is not relieved by rest, or if there are any kind of symptoms like the chest pain or breathing difficulties or the cough or dizziness or even the blurring of vision, we should terminate the exercise session immediately and again evaluate him or assess the patient before you call him for the next session. Now, I think these exercise programs are more theoretical nowadays. Nowadays, I mean, because the patient and the family members are really hesitant to come to a hospital setup for exercise during this COVID time. So we have actually initiated or preferred the settings, that is the tele-rehabilitation. As I mentioned before, that these education programs are a great success as far as tele-rehabilitation is concerned. So we all understand what tele-rehabilitation means. It is the rehabilitation intervention cannot be carried out in direct contact with the patient. It is a helpful alternative strategy. Remote cardio rehabilitation is safe and effective, and it is already proven in heart patients with cardiovascular disease or post-cardiac surgery. And in Belgium, almost 52% of rehabilitation centers are already providing cardiac rehab programs by implementing tele-rehabilitation to post-COVID patients. 35 centers reported delivering cardiac rehab in using tele-rehab in Canada. So it is nothing but a proper use of technology. It is a multidisciplinary tele-rehabilitation model. The patient can be in touch through smartphones or maybe through emails or maybe through web-based platforms. They can be in touch with the occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, even the speech and language therapist for the problems, and they can be in touch with the physician. So the face-to-face sessions are replaced with remote assessment and monitoring, guiding through tele-rehab. The most important thing is like the monitoring systems. The patient should be provided with the monitoring systems at home, that is like for oximetry or for blood pressure control, as well as we have this telemetry based ECG. So things which I think are very important to be considered in carrying out tele-rehabilitation is the right staff who is dealing with the patient remotely, and the ability to use the technology on the part of the patient as well as the staff. Plus, we must have other methods of implementing tele-rehabilitation if the patient does not have access to technology. Uh, so to conclude my lecture, any patient with COVID-19 would require a complete assessment of their symptoms, exercise capacity, function, and potential impairments. Depending on the patient's initial assessment and their clinical and cardiovascular risk profile, an exercise program should be developed. Exercise is considered to be a biological drug, so we must pay close attention to ensure the right dose is administered to our patients. The good thing about rehab in COVID patients is that exercise can be modulated in terms of frequency, intensity, and the speed of execution in order to adapt programs to this novel group of patients that is emerging as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And rehabilitation is not only exercise, but we must keep in mind that it is a multidisciplinary approach involving exercise, diet, and psychological support is most important. So I would like to conclude, and I wish all of you to stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you very much, sir, for wonderful presentation. And